And only 2 weeks left now, 2 weeks gone. You have suffered loss. Did you ever realize that your loss was someone else's gain? Has it ever entered into your consciousness that your loss was someone else's gain? That as the value of the money fell, there's a massive transfer of wealth from the masses to a blood-sucking predatory elite. Yeah, that is riba as well. And then when you take out the money, another 5 years later, can't buy a donkey anymore, could only buy a goat. And if you wait long enough, you could only buy doubles. Huh? That way Indonesia reached today. Could only buy doubles. That way Turkey reached today. Could only buy doubles. This is our pathetic state. We have abandoned the Prophet ﷺ, abandoned his sunnah on these very crucial, vital issues of shirk and riba. What can we do? How can we stay out of shirk? How can we stay out of riba? I don't know about you, but I know about myself that I do not recognize the sovereignty of the state of Trinidad and Tobago. You can put me in jail for that. Go ahead, I do it. And me going and voting no elections for no PNM or no UNC. That's how I will do it. And I'm not pledging allegiance to the constitution of this state. No. I will never do that. Of course, like everybody else, I just use the word Monday and Tuesday and January and February. So I have to pray to Allah and ask Him for forgiveness for that shirk. Because sometimes I just also say Friday, which is shirk. How can we stay away from riba? How can we bring back sunnah money? You can't do it in the market today. You've got to have to build a Muslim village. And in the Muslim village, you will have the Muslim market. And in the Muslim market, yes, you can try to bring back sunnah money. And when I stand up in this country to offer the project of a Muslim village, I am viciously attacked, maliciously attacked, monstrously attacked by the president of the ASJA. Awesomely misguided man, awesomely misguided Jamaat. But he who laughs last, laughs best. If this is our pathetic state on the front of shirk and of riba, what about the rest of the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ? We're talking about Muhammad ﷺ and the world today. Nabi Muhammad ﷺ was sitting in his home when his sister-in-law came in, his wife's sister. Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha had an elder sister named Asma. So she came in and she was wearing clothing which was a bit transparent. So when the Messenger of Allah saw her, he turned his face away. And he said to her, Asma, when a girl reaches the age of puberty, so now she has a monthly cycle, nothing must be seen of her body except this. And he pointed to the face, and this, and he pointed to the hands. And so a woman is supposed to be covered. We use the word hijab to describe that covering, hijab. But actually hijab means a curtain. that no one can speak to Allah except min wara'il hijab. When our mothers were alive and our grandmothers were alive, we never saw a Muslim woman on the street bareheaded. Eh? You ever saw your mother bareheaded? Or your grandma? Nani Ammi? No. They used to wear something called orni, but at least they were covered. Really? Where are our Muslim women today? Illa masha'Allah. The woman in hijab is the exception. The majority of our Muslim women today have abandoned hijab and have followed the Jews and Christians down into the lizard hole. She's gone to work in the bank and she's dressed like all the others in the bank. You wouldn't know she's a Muslim woman. This abandonment of the Sunnah has taken place before our eyes. Do we make an effort to try to correct it? If your wife is not in hijab, you have to answer for it. You're president of the Jamaat? You're the president of the Islamic Association? And your wife is going to work in bareheaded? Is this a joke? And your daughter going to school bareheaded? And she's a big girl? Is this a joke? What about the rest of the community? When you see Muslim women bareheaded on the streets, what about the rest of the Muslim community? Listen to the Prophet ﷺ and tell me whether we are following the Sunnah or not. He said, "Man ra'a munkaran falyughayyirhu biyadi." He said, if you see something which is wrong, which is evil, change it with your hand. فَإِن لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِلِسَانِهِ. If you can't change it with your hand, he said, change it with your tongue. وَإِن لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِقَلْبِهِ. If you can't change it with your tongue, at least change it with your heart. What are we doing? Are we attempting to change it with our hands? Well, if not, are we speaking out against it? And if we're not speaking out against it, are we detesting it in our hearts? And if we are not even detesting it in our heart, and he said that is the weakest form of faith. That is the weakest one of all, to detest it in your heart. The overwhelming majority of the women of our community have abandoned hijab. We're not attempting to change it with the hand. We're not attempting to change it with the tongue. We're not even detesting it in the heart. Would you not agree that nothing now remains of Islam but the name? Allah has permitted in the Quran, and the Prophet ﷺ has permitted in his Sunnah, permitted a Muslim man to marry more than one wife. Does anyone want to challenge me and say I'm wrong? Come on, say it now. If I'm wrong, come and say it. He says in the Quran, وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا فَوَاحِدَةً. If you fear that you will not be able to deal justly with your wives, then marry only one. But if you can deal with them justly, and if you have the means to maintain, then Allah has given you permission to marry up to 4. This is in the Quran. When I was a boy growing up, they taught me what is the definition of Islam in the CMYO. They said that the definition of Islam is submission to Allah. That is Islam. Submission to Allah. Well, submission to Allah means submission to the word of Allah, isn't it? Which means submission to the word of Allah in the Quran, isn't it? Yes. And when I went at the age of 21, 22 to Pakistan and became the student of Maulana Fadlur Rahman Ansari, I remember it was October 1964. And we sat down for the first class with the Maulana. I think we may have been about a dozen students from about 6 different countries. And Maulana is teaching us the first class delivered in Alimia Institute of Islamic Studies. What is the lesson that he taught us? That lesson is before my eyes today as plain as the rain. He said, and of course it shocked me. It took some time for me to accept it. He said, when you know that it is the word of Allah, then whether you understand it or you don't, whether you're comfortable with it or you are not, when you know it is the word of Allah, submit to it. Understanding could come afterwards. You could come comfortable with it afterwards. But once you know it is the word of Allah, submit to it. If you don't submit, you're not a Muslim. Today, 999 out of every 1,000 women says, no, I can't accept that. Not my husband. Me, I'm prepared to share my husband with no other woman. No, no, no. It might be in the Quran, but I the Quran. I do not accept it. That is the state of brainwashing. Of course, this lecture is going to make me unpopular, but my duty is to try to please my Lord, not please the people. Someone has to speak it out. And I'm doing it tonight. This brainwashing of our Muslim women, where has it come from? It has come from that Christian Jewish world, the white world that is ruling the world today. Wherever the Christian Jewish world has not been able to influence our people and brainwash our people, our women don't behave like that. If you go to Afghanistan and see the Muslim women in Afghanistan. Go to many parts of Africa which have not as yet been touched by the white world order. And you'll see Muslim women who are not at all uncomfortable with plural marriages. Did the Prophet ﷺ shake hands with women? Come on, answer me. Did the Prophet ﷺ shake hands with women? No, he did not. No, he did not. We never did that in our history. Jazakallah. Men and women in Islam never shook hands. Never. Today, men and women in Islam are shaking hands. In Trinidad, they're worse than that. They're kissing. All over the place, they're kissing. Where did this come from? This came from the Christians and the Jews. When they started shaking hands, we follow them. As the Prophet prophesied, he said, even if they were to go down into the lizard's hole, you go down into the lizard's hole with them. And so we should not shake hands with women. Yes, they're going to feel offended. But it's better that they be offended than your Lord be offended. Allah put a beard on the face of the male. Did He? Yeah, I think he did it. Would you agree with me? That Allah put the beard on the face of the male? How are you so quiet? Why did He put a beard on the face of the male? So you can distinguish the male from the female from a distance, without having to look to any other part of the body. And men always wore their beards. Always. All through history. It didn't matter which religion you belonged to. Until when? Until the Jews and the Christians shaved it off. Which Jews and Christians? The one in the white world. And when they shaved it off, guess what happened? All of us shaved it off. Illa masha'Allah. And those who didn't shave it off, they kept an apology of a beard. The Prophet ﷺ followed instructions given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, permitting women to pray in the masjid. He said, do not prevent your woman from coming to the masjid. A woman has a choice. She can either pray at home or she can pray in the masjid. You get the same blessings. But for a man, he gets 27 times more if he comes to the masjid than he prays at home. Listen to the hadith and tell me, what are you going to do with this hadith? If you say that you follow the sunnah, then tell me, what are you going to do with this hadith? He said, أحسن الصفوف للرجال أولها وشرها آخرها. The best row for the men is the first, and the worst is the last. The one with the greatest danger is the last. Why? What danger is there? Centipede or scorpion? What danger is there for the last row? And he went on to say, أحسن الصفوف للنساء آخرها وشرها أولها. And the best row for the woman is the last. And the worst, the one with the greatest danger, is the first. Could anyone explain this to me? If you're listening to this tape or this CD, can you explain this to me? If you put the woman upstairs, well, then why should she go in the last row? If you put the woman in an annex, well, then why should she go in the last row? If you put a partition between the men and the women, well, then why does she have to go to the last row? If you put up a partition, you should take this hadith and throw it in the garbage bin. Because the only way that this hadith makes sense, the only way that you can apply the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, the only way, whether you like it or whether you don't, whether you're comfortable with it or you are not, it is irrelevant. Islam doesn't come from you. Islam comes from Allah and His Messenger. And the worst place to change Islam is in the masjid. Because you change it in the masjid, when you go there, you ain't getting no water. He ain't going to give you no water. He's going to say you change your religion. The worst place to change the religion is in the house of Allah. What this hadith tells us is that men and women prayed in the same space. It matters not. It is irrelevant whether you like it or whether you don't like it. Whether you're comfortable or you're uncomfortable with it, because Islam may come from you. You like the religion, keep it and accept it. You don't like it, you can leave it. But don't attempt to change it. Men and women prayed in the same space. Men at the front and women at the back. And there was no barrier in between. And so when a woman prayed, she prayed not only with her ears, but also with her eyes. Where is that today? Huh? It gone? Illa masha'Allah. One or two masjid in Trinidad. No parda. All the rest have it. Worse than that, when we grew up in this country, it wasn't like here in Princestown where the women at the back and men at the front. When we growing up, it's men on one side and women on the other side. That's what we know as religion in Trinidad. And you had a parda going down the road vertically, not that way. So the saf used to have men and women in the same saf. Yeah? Men and women used to be standing in the same saf in Trinidad for donkey years. And if the first row of the men had to go back a little bit, you had to tell the woman at the side to go back one step. You're shaking your head now. You recognize that we used to pray with men and women in the same row, with a parda in between. Yeah? That is the extent. That is the extent of the abandonment of the sunnah. And when you try to bring back the sunnah, you meet all kind of opposition. But inshallah, when we build the Muslim village, and we build the masjid in the Muslim village, there will be no parda between the men and women. He said that when you go down in sajda, and the Imam says Allahu Akbar to come up from sajda, the women must keep their heads down for some time to allow the men to sit up, and then the women must raise their head. Did he not say that? Well, where's the need for that if you put them upstairs, or you put them in an annex, or you put them behind some partition? Truly, the religion is gone, and all that remains now is the shell. Everything is changing today. Our food is changing today. Allah provided food for us, the great engineer. And He gave to the food a genetic composition, that the food will not only provide nutrition, the food will also function medicinally. Food has other things to do. It is the food that you eat, that will affect the semen that a man produces. He said that the time will come when one man will have to maintain how many women? Somebody help me? 50 women. One man will have to maintain 50 women. That's coming up. What that implies is that there's going to be a dramatic decline in baby boys being born. That has already started in some parts of the world. Singapore, for example. I have visited Singapore so many times. I have so many students in Singapore. But the enormous number of girls and women who approach me and my wife, Maulana, can you help me? I want to get married. Can you help me? I want to get married. Can't get a husband. You have faced that situation here in Trinidad yet, you know. You should go to Singapore and see it. The proportion of women to men is now so great that it's a problem out there. What is it that's going to cause this alarming decline in baby boys being born? I believe that it will be something connected with the food that we eat that will affect sperm production. I believe that when you change the genetic composition of food, you alter that capacity of food to do other things besides provide nutrition. And that is what we're doing today, eating the genetically modified food. Finally, because I do not want to continue indefinitely. Finally, we have followed the Jews and Christians in the most disastrous of all, down into the lizard's hole. The Prophet ﷺ warned of an age that will come. He said, when time will move swiftly, a whole year will pass like a month, and a month like a week, and a week like a day, etc. And then when he was asked, why will there be this perception of time moving faster and faster? And his reply was that instead of the zikr of Allah being in the heart, the dunya will be in the heart. When the dunya takes control of the heart, then we believe that this is the only world. We live for this world. We do not recognize any reality beyond this world. That's called materialism. That materialism has today come to the world from the Christians and the Jews. And it has swept all of mankind, illa masha'Allah. What is the price that we pay when we embrace materialism? When we forget Allah and the dunya takes control of the heart. When the fear of Allah no longer resides in the heart. You're afraid of the policeman, but you're afraid of Allah. I'll tell you what is the price that we'll pay. The heart becomes dead. The heart can no longer see. It can no longer hear. It can no longer understand. Knowledge now comes from only external sources. Knowledge does not come from internal sources. What is the price that we pay if we have eyes but we can't see? What is the price that we pay if we have ears but we can't hear? If we have hearts that we can't understand? Let me point out this price and we now end. The Prophet ﷺ spoke of an age that will come. It will be the age of Dajjal. Dajjal has a PhD in deception. He comes with two things, a river and a fire. Huh? But his river is a fire. And his fire is the cool waters of a river. And so appearance and reality are opposite to each other whenever Dajjal attacks. Appearance and reality are opposite to each other. Things are not what they appear to be when Dajjal attacks. And so if you see with only your external eye, you're going to be deceived. You will think that you're walking on the road to heaven, when in fact you're walking to hell. And you would think, but that is the road to hell. Me ain't going on that road at all. When in fact, that is the road to heaven. This is the state of the Christian Jewish world today. Internal blindness. All going on the road to the hellfire. An essentially godless world they are. And guess where we are? We're following them. Hook, line, and sinker, we're following them. We're just as blind as they are. This is the confirmation that we're down in the lizard's hole with them. This is the biggest of all tragedies. Because when the man deaf, dumb, and blind, you could talk to him, it ain't make no sense. He ain't going to listen to you, he can't even understand. And so we end today by pointing out that the birth anniversary of the Prophet ﷺ is a time when we celebrate with singing in praise of Him. But on this occasion we should recognize that the whole house is on fire. So rather than take a bucket of paint